Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today must be Tuesday at 5 o'clock Central Standard Time. You're in the right place at the right time. We are here and you are here, and we want to thank you all for coming out to be with us on today. We've got a repeat guest on today, my good friend and brother, Mr. Osei Hutchinson is here. I just cut all his name up real bad. Osei, Andrews-Hutchinson. He's got a whole long list of names that he's carries. So everybody in the community will know who he is, and I'm excited to have him on the show today. He's a repeat. He's been here before, and he always brings us good and positive information. So I'm really excited about having him on the show today. So we're not going to dilly-dally. We're not going to take any long period of time. We're going to get right into our shout out so we can get him on the air with us. The first thing I want to do is give a shout out to all of our health care heroes. We have people that are in the community that are keeping our loved ones alive and keeping them safe and bringing them back to us. So I encourage you all, don't think that this thing is over with the pandemic. Take your time, wear your mask, keep your distance, and just use wisdom. Don't allow yourself to get caught up in all of the hype that's going on in the community, okay? Definitely, be safe and take your time about leaving the house, making sure you got your mask, you got everything that you need to get back home to your family. So I definitely want to give a shout out to them because they have a thankless job. We do not thank them enough. So I truly always like to give them thanks for the work that they do and keep up the good work. Also want to give a shout out to all of our spiritual leaders that are on the front line. They're out there trying to keep our loved ones, blessed and secured and uplifted at a time like this because this is a lot of things going on that is brand new. Okay, people keep saying we're going back to what it used to be. We may not need to go back to the way it used to be. We may need to embrace something new and different. So I encourage you, if you don't have a spiritual leader, to get one. And if you do have one, keep them lifted up in prayer, keep them encouraged, because we need to encourage all of our spiritual leadership. Okay. We need to. All right. Let's move over here right quick. I want to invite everyone to go over to my website, ask-dr-ron.com. When you get over there, I want you to check out all of the advertisers that I have. There's a few of them listed here. RJ Webb, Prince Hunter, Port Again Sam. Check out all of our advertisers because without them, we are not able to do what we do here on the Ask Dr. Ron show. So I encourage you guys to please check out all of our advertisers and support them. If you click on any of the banners, it will take you directly to their website and you'll be able to check out what they do and how they do it. Also, at the very top of the website, you'll see all of my social media tabs. You'll see Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Check out the playlist that I have devoted to all of my old shows and also to Dr. Hunt, who is my mentor and spiritual leader. So check out all of these things when you get over there to the website. So I breezed through that on purpose because I am so excited to get to my guest today. My guest, Mr. Osei Andrews-Hutchinson, who has been on the show before, and he's an old pro now. He's been hanging out with me for 9 years or more, actually. On my Facebook feed, I ran across a picture of him in the studio 9 years ago. And I just showed it to him before we started going live here. And it was like, last time he was on the show, I said, man, it's been about 10 years I've been done. He said, nah, Dr. Ron, it ain't been that long. It ain't been that long. Well, Facebook just proved me right. That was just one of the studio pictures of one of his visits that came on the show. So it's been at least a good 10 years that my brother and I have been hanging out together. And welcome back to the show, my brother, Mr. Osei Andrews-Hutchinson.
Dr. Ron, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm still glad to be alive, man. That's
Yes,
my
sir. Yes,
testimony.
sir.
I'm
Yes,
sticking
sir.
to it. You
Yeah, it
know,
is.
it's a lot of people, to the tune of 700,000 in the
Hmm.
United States alone that are not still here.
That's right.
And
That's right.
and a lot of that has to do with being irresponsible and not using wisdom on any level.
That's right.
So man, I'm just still glad to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes,
I,
sir.
I
Me
don't
too.
I don't make public appearances anymore. I stay right in the studio. If you need me, I'll pop up. I'm there, on the studio. I'm on video.
Yes,
I'll be
sir.
there. But in person, nope, not gonna do it.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not
Not
yet,
yet.
not yet.
That's
That's the
right.
magic word. Not yet. I plan on surviving this thing.
Yes, sir.
That's my
Yes, sir.
plan. Now I
No doubt.
know, unfortunately for you, you have to go out and you've got children that you teach. I know your school is back, open in full attendance. So you want to share some information, what's going on in your world now?
Sure. Well, as you said, Village Leadership Academy, which is the school that my wife co-founded, and I serve as the director of technology and also life skills instructor. We just, as many schools, have gone back to in-person learning. Fortunately, and I'm knocking on wood really hard, fortunately, we have had issues. We've been following a strict protocol with masks, checking temperatures, washing hands, hand sanitizer at the door, all of that, and testing. And I think that's really the key that we have to keep in
Hold on one
mind
second,
here.
brother. I'm having an issue with you coming across live here.
Okay.
Let's see. Can I get this straightened out right quick? Try it now.
Can you hear me okay?
No, you're still not coming
No? So
across. I
have an
don't
issue?
know.
Can you hear me? Test, test,
I
test.
can hear you through
Okay.
the Skype, but I'm not hearing you through my program.
Oh,
And that's not supposed to be happening like that. Hold on. Let me see what's going on here, because I always test to make sure that I have audio. I'm not hearing my own audio for some reason. Interesting. Okay, I'm seeing everything. Oh, you know why? Duh. I turned the volume down.
ah,
That will do it. Okay. All right, say something.
so you gotta restart your whole intro?
No.
Can you hear me?
No,
Can you
no,
hear
no,
me?
no. We're good. We're good, bro. No,
Okay.
no, 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 no. We're good.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I remember I told you at the beginning of the show. I said I'm gonna silence my volume. Well, I
Right.
silenced the volume on my earpiece, so my earpiece couldn't hear what was coming across on the
I
live
got you. Got
feed.
you. Got you.
So you
Got you.
were
Got
coming across all along. I just couldn't hear it. So now keep
you.
going.
All right.
I stopped you unnecessarily, broke your
No,
rhythm.
that's
I'm
all right. It's
sorry.
all good. Hey, better be safe than sorry. Better be safe than sorry, right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. So yeah, so all I was saying is that I think one of the things that we need to really be cognizant of, regardless of how you feel about vaccines, the test is pretty straightforward. It's not, it's basically a sanitized Q-tip if you're doing the nose one or saliva. So you're giving bodily fluids. There's nothing. See, the vaccine, let's be clear, the vaccine is from the virus, right? The vaccine helps mitigate the consequences or the symptoms that can prevent hospitalization and death, right? But it doesn't stop you from getting it. So that's part of going back to point about people kind of is that people who are vaccinated are like, yeah, I'm good, but they don't realize, maybe don't realize that they can still get the virus and they can transmit it. So it needs to be really taken into consideration that concern is, are you getting tested regularly, right? One brother's on Facebook just posted today. He's vaccinated, but he caught it, and so he was like, wait a minute, so and so he has to be on lockdown. He passed the virus. So the school, the leadership academy, available and actually asking staff to test every week or two to make sure that they haven't come in contact with anybody, and it's not a spreader, because the reality is also at this point still children under 12 are not being vaccinated, not yet. So when you're in middle school, a lot of children are going to be under 12. Right. So you want to make sure that they are safe. And so we're asking our teachers and staff and other people that come in contact with children to test regularly, right? To ensure that you didn't, and you might be asymptomatic. You may be feeling fine, feeling great, flying high, but you could have the virus and pass it along. So I think needs to be enforced, or not enforced, but at least put out and propagated more so. Now, I don't say more so than vaccinations, because I'm not going to get into that debate. But the reality is, testing is something that is fairly clear and can be done very easily. And it doesn't, and it's non-invasive. I don't like sticking something in my nose either, but I'd rather do that and instead of not knowing if this little cough or little sneeze or whatever I have, if anything, is potentially passing it on to somebody. So go ahead. You had a question?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, and they also do it non-invasive by doing swab in your mouth now.
Saliva, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they can test your saliva and determine whether or not you have any traces of this germ or not. So it's a couple of ways of doing it that allow things to be comfortable to know your status.
No doubt.
Now it's interesting, and I know you have traveled many places around the world, that some of the places that you and I have gone to, they don't have the major outbreak that we have in the United States.
Exactly.
And that's very interesting. People go places and they have to be tested when they come into these countries, and some people have been turned around at the border.
That's right.
Because they didn't have the proper credentials.
Right.
When they tried to enter into some of these like Jamaica or some of these other places in the world, and one in particular that I know has been operating germ free for at least 6 months or longer has been Africa.
Mm-hmm.
One of those third world countries that they say, they don't know nothing. They're not as smart as we are. Well, they ain't got the outbreak that we got. So what does that say?
Right. We know that's about. Yeah. I mean, to that point, brother, I was supposed to actually be going to next month. I was supposed to be going to Cape Verde, which is right off the coast of Senegal, through a program through the State Department, a program that it was set up under President Obama, where he brings over young leaders from Africa all throughout the continent, primarily south of the Sudan, south of the Sahara, and there's a program that they instituted where you can actually go and visit them and see their work and support their work. So we were actually going to go, me and one of my guys were going to go and support a sister that came over in 2019. And it's been pushed back. And we were trying to go in November, and the State Department runs it. So they basically say, well, according to our, measurements, you can't go because that country is still on level 3 or whatever. And the sister who we're trying to support over there, she's like, what are y'all talking about? You're telling me that you don't have in-person, the State Department is still not in person, it's still virtual, you all seeing all these things and doing all these things, but that's not a problem here. I just talked to the ambassador here, U.S. ambassador here, and we're fine, we're doing well. So what's the issue? What's the problem? And again, it's misinformation, I think, part of it, but there's also a different perspective, if you will, on what is considered to be modern health and all those things. So it's to your point, the continent of Africa is not having the same impact. Yes, there are people getting sick and dying, but nowhere near the levels of what you're seeing in the United States and Brazil and in Europe.
Yep, Brazil is kind of out of control.
Well, Brazil, the president makes 45 teacher, man. That dude Bolsonaro is mess.
Yeah, when you said Brazil, I'm like, I don't know about that one, man. That guy, he was worse than 45. Still is, and he's still in power.
He's still in power. Like I said, he makes 45 like a kindergarten teacher.
Yeah, that guy.
He ain't. Yeah.
And to the detriment of his people. You know,
No
because
doubt.
there are a lot of people, you know, I know we think of Brazil as a paradise, you know, vacation spot, Rio de Janeiro, you know, things of that nature. But there are people that live there that are not living high on the hog,
No
you know,
doubt.
and those are the
Yeah.
people that don't have the A1 healthcare
Mm-hmm.
and they are suffering,
Yep.
you know. So, you know, and they're still dealing with, you know, diseases that most countries have under control,
That's right.
you know.
That's right. With
So,
diseases and all other kind of issues.
you're right, exactly. Poverty
Yeah,
on a
yeah,
major
yeah,
level.
yeah,
So, you
yeah. And then
know,
what people don't realize is that Brazil actually has more people of African descent than the U.S. does. You know,
yes. And
so
that's
that's
because, you know, unfortunately, Brazil catered to the slave trade a lot longer and a lot longer before the United States did. You know,
no
Brazil
doubt.
was one of the ports in which they delivered Africans
Right,
to,
right,
you know, which a lot of descendants from Africa are still
right, right,
there.
right, 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 right.
And actually,
Hey,
go ahead.
I was like you. I know you've been around a minute, and you know the system, and you know the trade, and I'm sure you're familiar with John Hendricks, right? John
T-
Hendricks used to.
tell me about it.
Well, John Hendricks was he had a group called Hendricks, Lambert and Ross. He was a brother, a white man and a white woman, and they basically made vocalese like what Manhattan Transfer and these other groups have recently have done, where they basically
Okay.
put words to the jazz music. And he was by far the bomb. And he had a song on one of his first albums called "Stop the Long the Way," and he talks about stops that were made to that
Along the
point,
way.
along
Yeah.
the way. Stop along the way.
Right. Right. And you know, a lot of people don't know this, but I have worked with Brazilian dance companies.
Mm.
Ballet Folklore de Senegal is the national dance company from Brazil, from the area, from the region, and they are very original in their content and their performing of original African performances
Mm-hmm.
outside of Africa because they keep
Mm-hmm.
their heritage alive through their dance and through their music,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, and it's a lot of things that can be traced back to their ancestors that are in Africa because they kept the legacy alive, you know,
Oh
even
yeah.
in the food and the culture that they have. You know, if you go
Mm-hmm.
to some
Mm-hmm.
of the outer villages and the outer cities that exist in Brazil, man, you know, they have so much similarity to, you know, after you see what the Brazilians do and then you see what the Africans do,
Oh yeah.
you're just like, man, they spot on. They got it,
No
you know.
doubt. No doubt. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's why I recommend when people go to Brazil, they want to go to Rio, right? I say, no, you need to go to
No.
Bahia. You need to go to
Bahia.
Salvador, right? And
Yep,
you
Bahia.
see that history
Yep.
and culture, and I mean, and it's actually intersected. They call it syncretism, where you go to a Catholic church, right? But you'll see shrines to the African, deities, to Oshun or Ogun or Shango or whatever. I mean, you'll see it all over the place. And I mean, the Catholic Church, I guess, just said, okay, fine, just come in the building. You can pray to whoever you want.
Right.
But it's definitely African, and you see the African impact there
Right.
throughout the culture.
Yes, definitely. And they are very, very intelligent people. You know, people
No
that have,
doubt.
you know, one of the martial art forms that originated in Brazil,
Capoeira.
you know, capoeira. You
Capoeira.
know,
Right,
and
right,
and I
right,
know
right.
that that's one of the reasons. I see how I led that in there. I know that's one of the things that you teach to your students at your school.
We did. Our capoeira instructor actually is no longer with us. He's living a life down in Antigua. But
Ah, he got out of here.
oh yeah, he's out.
Ah,
He took his wife and his three kids, and they're living the life. I see his posts on Facebook. I'm like, man, he went and did it. He's living it, but he's still practicing, and actually he lectures about capoeira and the African connections to it, and he studied capoeira in Brazil, in Bahia. So
right.
yeah, and that's part of what when we started as a school. That was our PE. That was our physical education. Was capoeira.
So now I got to ask this question. Now, all the students that he had, nobody picked up enough to be able to be an instructor.
Some did, and I mean, really, let's be honest. We're talking about grammar school, right? We're talking about grammar
Hey,
school,
that's
middle
where it
school.
starts at.
That's true. That's true. And we're just now seeing some of our students getting into college and graduating just now,
Okay.
right? I mean, our first class, I think we had so far we've had one or two graduates because people actually skipped years, and so they're starting to graduate or getting ready to graduate. So they're not quite ready to come back and teach yet. You know what I'm saying? We still
Okay.
have now, and like my son, my son was in Brazil
Right.
right before the pandemic hit, and I was trying to urge him to reconnect because he was there when the school went in 2010. He was there. And we went to that first capoeira school in Pelourinho, which is the old town of Salvador. And he went back and like took one of those, future pictures, past pictures. So he took a current picture of him in front of the capoeira school that we had a picture from when we were there in 2010.
All right
And
now.
he's just a freshman in college. So, he's
Okay.
still, and I was like, yeah, you need to get some, you need to go play some capoeira while you're there. And he tried, just never got into it. But in time, that'll be the point where that, yeah, okay, all right, yeah, you got that background, you know how to do this.
Right.
You maybe not a mestre yet, maybe not a instructor yet, but you have a background that you can pick up from.
Yeah. Yeah. And your son was on my show 10 years
Yep,
ago.
yep, he
You
was.
know,
He was in
he and
that same.
another, right. He and
Right,
another student. There was two
that's
of
right.
them that
Yep, him
came
and
on.
Caleb Ottman was down there. Yep, he's
Yep,
in
and
that
they
role.
came and spoke very intelligently about their trip and the things
Yep,
that they had done.
yep.
And to hear that he is a freshman in high school? I mean, freshman in
He's a
college
freshman.
now.
He's a
Okay,
freshman.
is he going to continue on with continuing edge, or did he define something else he's interested in?
He's in engineering.
Okay,
So he's studying engineering at ASU, Arizona
okay,
State.
all right.
Yep,
That's
yep,
what's up. That's what's up.
yep.
So I know you have so many topics that you can talk about, but I want to throw one up. I want to thank you on one of our outings, get-togethers, meetings, where you introduced me to Tremor Black.
Oh
And
yes.
yes, a very, very, very influential historian in the community in the Chicagoland area. And I want to say we were at Pearls. I do believe we were at Pearls on the south side
Okay.
on Michigan, at the
He maybe he
hotel.
came in or something.
Well, I think we were there, and I think he came in and was getting ready to
Right,
have lunch or something
right,
because we
right,
were
right,
doing a
right.
lunch
Yeah,
meeting or something like that. And then you introduced me to him, and it was an honor and a privilege to meet him.
no
And then
doubt,
you were sharing with such enthusiasm about his historical legacy. So
no
you want
doubt,
to
no
talk
doubt.
about him a little bit?
I talked about Tim a couple of days ago. About almost a week ago.
Almost a
Last
week ago. Yeah.
Thursday. Yeah, last Thursday he passed away. He made his transition. He was 102. And that brother has been through it all. He's seen it all. He's written a couple of books. I first met Bob Tim back in 2005. International, which I'm a member of and have been very active in. Rotary International had its international convention here in Chicago in 2005, which is the 100th year anniversary. Rotary started in Chicago in 1905, so it had its 100-year anniversary celebration convention. And so we had a event during the convention to host Rotarians from all over the world. So we had Rotarians from Europe, from Africa, from Asia, and we had an event there. Asked Professor Black to come and grace us, and he came and spoke to the group and talked about what he's seen and done, and he was amazing, and so ever since then I followed, had interact with him a number of times since then. Like I said, he just transitioned just a couple days ago. One of the things that I've worked with the brother,
Mm-hmm.
which was a program that we were able to help fund through Rotary. And so one of the things that we did was he was doing different cohorts of young people to get them educated about how to build peace. And so he had a group of young women. It was all young women, and they were like, "Man, we need to be out here. We need to understand this community." And so they were all around Bronzeville. They actually reenacted. I know you know the picture of the young boys in front of the car from back in the day, right? They kind
Mm-hmm.
of reenacted that picture. And so they asked, they said, well, hey, is there any possibility of us sitting down with Bob or Tim? I said, well, let's ask the people who know him real well. And so a brother named Joe Harrington, who has been around for a while, long time, and has been an administrator in the healthcare industry and a big supporter of Rotary and a good mentor to me, actually was working with his family a lot. So he was able to have that happen with these young women, 7 or 8 of them, have this intergenerational conversation with Bob and Tim and just talk with him for about an hour. It was an awesome experience. And that was his nature. He was like, hey, yeah, I'm old and I've learned a lot, but it's my duty to share my understandings with the world. I mean, that's each one teach one. That's the African proverb, right? Each one teach one. And he lived that. And so even though he was 100, 101, 102, he was still out speaking. That was just 2 years ago. So he was 100 then. Can you imagine being 100 years old and saying, yeah, just make sure I get there and I'll talk to anybody.
Right.
I mean,
right.
We don't want to do that at 40, and here he is 100 years old making us younger folk look bad, and so, I mean, that was his nature. It's like, I'm going to set the example of what it means to be, the French term is griot, but the African term is jale, right? Or to be a jegna. Carrier of the tradition, responsible for the tradition of enculturating our young people, our next generation. So that's what he truly was. He was a jegna, and he never let these little things like health and all these other petty concerns bother him. He went out and did it. I'm sure he probably was trying to do a speaking engagement before he passed away. He just wrote a book a couple of years ago that just came out. 2019. I got a copy of it. So yeah, he was, and I should say still is, a treasure that we had right here on the south side of Chicago, right here in the Brownsville community. Never left, and was dedicated to telling the right story from the right perspective, which is our perspective.
Yeah, and if you think about 100 years, in this country, he lived through the civil rights movement.
That's right.
He saw things that we hear about. He actually lived through those things.
That's right.
I talked about him briefly on my Sunday Black History Moment. I did a tribute to him, and I posted an article that one of the local newspapers had posted. His parents were sharecroppers, and they migrated from the South into Chicago.
Right.
So when they got here, this was a different place
no doubt.
for them to land. But he quickly pointed out that they had a different type of racism going on here than they did in the South. And it's it's from a perspective, because nowadays, and I'm just gonna call a spade a spade. White folks say, "Oh no, we don't have a history of treating people bad." They say those things, man.
That's right.
They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to own it. They don't want to live up to it. But when you talk about indigenous people of this country, they got upset Columbus Day just recently. The Italians were so upset because they used the word indigenous people to help celebrate Columbus Day.
Right.
And they were like, well, they got 365 days out there. They can celebrate and don't have to celebrate on our day.
Right.
But the bottom line is this, there were people that were here when they got here, and I remember hearing a conversation with someone that I thought was so profound. Osei, you live down in the city of Chicago in Brownsville.
Right.
So how do I come down, knock on your door, come in and say, I'm planting my flag. I just discovered your house, and now I'm gonna occupy it.
Right.
And I'm gonna use all your resources. I'm gonna take everything you got and claim it as mine.
That's right.
So what happens to you and your family at this point in time?
Exactly.
Like you weren't there. Like you didn't exist.
Right. Exactly.
So, and that's what the history of Europeans have done, not just in this country, but on every continent. But yet, when you ask them to own up to what they have done, they're like, "Oh no, we didn't do that."
Right,
You
right,
know,
right, right,
like
right,
like
right. Well, that was a long time ago.
right, right. Why don't y'all get over it? You know,
Right, 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 right,
oh yeah, y'all still talking about that? Yeah, I wasn't
right,
here when that happened.
right,
But
right, right,
you
right.
hear now using the word privilege, white privilege, to say that it was okay. You justify the behavior of your ancestors, like we don't want to acknowledge anything that they might have done so that the world would be the way that it is now.
That's right.
And
That's
then
right.
and then you hear about a person like, Trimble Black, who lived through that and told the stories up close and personal.
That's right.
This is a person that survived all the atrocities that you put before him and on him and his family,
That's
and was
right.
able to live 102 years to tell those stories. I definitely cannot applaud him and celebrate him enough.
Yes,
I
sir.
think it's
Yes, sir.
something that needs to be spoken and talked about every chance we get.
No doubt.
And I don't care who get a black eye out of it. You
Right.
know,
Right. Right.
if they get a black eye, oh well.
Oh well. Right.
Yeah,
What have we got over the hundreds of years? Right. More than black
exactly.
eyes. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, you get a black
Exactly.
eye. I remember we talked about it on my Thursday show, Street News Now. A couple of months back, we talked about the state of Oklahoma refuses to teach anything about, black history at all. They are not going
Hmm.
to teach their young white children that their ancestors were racist. They're not going to talk about the Oklahoma Passage. They're not going to talk about anything that, destroying the Indians or the indigenous people that the cavalry and all of the European soldiers did, all the atrocities of tribes that are extinct to this day
That's right.
because of the atrocities that they perform. So they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to own up
Right.
to it, you
Right.
know. And one of my co-hosts on the show on that particular night said, what do you expect from a state that has the lowest number of education in out of all the 50 states? They're like,
Hmm.
they're down at the bottom, 49th or something,
Right. Right.
when it comes to education in that state.
Right.
So, they would rather not talk about it than to embrace it and try and move forward so they can bring about a platform of healing, because
Right.
healing needs to come forth,
That's right.
and
That's
and
right.
America needs to own what it's done,
That's right. That's right.
and it's far from it. But
Well, let me.
go ahead.
I was going to just add to that. I mean, Professor Black, or we call him Baba Tim. You know, his family. He was born in 1918. Okay, when his family moved here, I think it had already been after. I don't remember the exact date when their family moved here, but it probably was after what they call the Red Summer, which was in 1919, where you had a series of what are being called, or what have been called historically, race riots. The reality is that they were terrorist attacks on black communities,
Right.
and they happened throughout the country, including here in Chicago. So
Hmm.
Chicago had a very deadly one. It was called the Race Riot of 1919, but it was not a riot. There was a brother, Eugene Williams, I think his last name was Williams, was swimming over here on 31st Street at the lake and drifted into the white area of the beach. White boy saw him, threw rocks at him. He was floating on a railroad tie. White boy saw him, threw rocks at him or bricks at him, hit him in the head, and he drowned. Right? Black folks came out and said, what? No, that ain't right. To call the police. Police came. The police started arresting the black people who were complaining. And black people like, no, they got mad. And so before you know it, white mobs are running through black communities, burning up and shooting people.
That's
Right?
right.
One of those mobs was called I think it was called the Hamburg. No, it's not the Hamburg. But it was a group. It was a club. And the leader of the club was, guess who? Our former mayor of Chicago City, Richard J. Daley. who was the head
Mm-hmm.
of the club, who was actually one of the people running through communities trying to kill or destroy black property.
Right.
And so that these are the histories that, like you said, aren't talked about. Oklahoma, as we have all heard about, hopefully, maybe not, maybe a lot of people haven't heard
Yeah.
about what's
Tulsa,
called
Oklahoma. That's right.
Black Wall Street, right? Tulsa,
Yep.
community in Tulsa, Greenwood, Oklahoma, which just unfortunately commemorated 100 years in 1921 when that community was decimated. 35 square blocks just wiped out. The official numbers of people killed is like really low, like 30, but it's like, if you ask the people in the community, they know that hundreds of black people were killed, massacred, had planes dropping bombs on buildings,
Bombs. Drop
had
bombs
the
on them.
county enlisting white people as deputies to go out and basically hunt black folks. So
Yep.
these are part of those stories that they don't want to talk about. So, I mean, yes, the atrocities against the indigenous people were horrific. The Trail of Tears was horrific. In addition to that, was all these things that were happening across the country, and that was in the Red Summer, and what followed in the years after that was kind of a not a reaction, but a result somewhat of black people saying, we are tired of this, we're not going to take it anymore, because black folks were coming back from where? World War I with some weapons training, knew how to
Yep.
fight, had seen a different world, had seen a world that didn't look like the United States, and said, wait a minute, I'm fighting for this country, I gave my life for this country, you still going to tell me I got to use a different bathroom or a different water fountain, I can't eat here, I can't sleep here, no, And so you had a pushback, which had never happened to that extent, before that, and really was the precursor to the things like the Deacons for Defense, the Black Panther Party, the Civil Rights Movement, all these things where people have said, we've had enough of this, we're not going to stand for it. And of course, there were different tracks of how that was dealt with. But again, part of those stories, what do we learn about in grammar school and high school? Dr. King and I Have a Dream.
Right.
Didn't learn about any of this other stuff. Didn't learn about the history of resistance
Right.
in the early 20th century, and even during quote unquote slavery, or when our ancestors were prisoners of war. That's what I call them. I don't call them slaves. They were prisoners of a war that was declared on African people worldwide, right? And as a result of all these things and not being talked about and just kind of sweeping under the rug, what do you have? You have generational wealth being built up in European descendant communities ad nauseum, but no concept of what generational wealth even looks like in the African American community, because we've been disenfranchised. Most of the families that moved to the north in the early 20th century moved because they were what? Running from terrorist attacks in the South.
That's right. The Klan.
Yeah. Well, the Klan and just groups of people.
Yep.
The police in some cases.
Right. Well, the Klan was a byproduct of once they, Juneteenth celebration or Juneteenth came about, and all of the slaves became aware that they had been set free. So then they created organizations to terrorize them and torment them, the sharecroppers, to keep them under persecution. Because the whole object of the South is to keep people of color, black people, under persecution.
No doubt.
And terrorize them, like you said, terrorist acts.
And we got to call it that. I think that's part of the struggle that we as black people need to be clear about, is that we are victims of multiple terrorist attacks over hundreds of years.
Yes.
It's not a race riot when you are trying to stand up for your liberty and your rights and your humanity, and then you're getting beat down with everything from a brick to a rifle or a cannon. That's not a riot. That's an attack on you as a human being.
That's right. That's right. Just recently, the Floyd protests, Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
Those protests were all about trying to change and bring about a justice for black people. And even that was met with unnecessary violence.
Of course it was.
And persecution. They just
that's been the history. And so I think people also have to take into context when we say, well, this has never happened before. This has been happening for hundreds of years. And we need to be clear on that this is nothing new under the sun, that white aggression towards black anything has been consistent in this country. And unfortunately, in an international organization like Rotary, they say, well, racism doesn't exist in the world. It's a U.S. thing. And the reality is it is a global system. It may look a little different, but, in France, they have racism. I've seen it personally when I was living there, in Germany and England. I mean, let's be clear about it. Some of us, we call it anti-blackness. It is a universal construct that has existed throughout the world since basically the end of the beginning of the Roman Empire.
Yep.
But it's been going on in different facets, and people try to separate it and say, well, that's not that, that's not this, not that's not. No, it's the same thing. And unfortunately, everywhere you go, I think Malcolm made this point very clearly. Everywhere you go, when you find black people, they're at the bottom of the social structure. They're at the bottom of the economic structure. They're under control, even in their own country.
Yep.
Even if they have quote unquote their own, own national system and everything, that country is subjected to a system that is racist in its core.
Right.
When you look at the International MF, as Kwame Ture used to say, he called it International MF, International Monetary Fund, and how it MFs everybody, but it really gets to, the African countries where it has basically destroyed local economies and national economies because of the unfair practices of dealing out aid dollars.
Right.
It is universal. So I mean, that's part of what my struggle is how do we get folk even woke enough to see it as an international thing, number one, but then number two, don't see it as just little time pockets, but that it's all connected.
All connected. Yeah.
All connected.
So and one of the things to counteract that, like you just briefly spoke about, is the monetary system. So we have to develop, and I say we, people of color, black folks of African descent, we need to establish businesses that can help us rise above our economic station, as they say, and then be able to, improve our own. We need to do for ourselves.
Right.
And one of the things that you have done over the last couple of years, and is continuously since I've been knowing you, has been working on trying to establish that such a thing.
No doubt.
One of those things that you have in place, because we've been talking about it here on the AskDrRon.com website, is the Synergy.
Synergy, right.
See how I've worked that in, man.
.com. You're on point. You're on point. So yes, Synergy. So I can take it from there. So Synergy, and we say Synergy. Sese is a word, it's an Ewe word. It's a word from the Ewe people of Ghana. And Sese is a word that means powerful, means strength. So we say we want to give the power of energy to our community and bring that together. So we say we are Synergy Eco Solutions Enterprise. And if you look at that, the acronym for that, Synergy Eco Solutions Enterprise, is SESE. All right, so power. We want to give power, and that's what and we want to bring it to community people, to community businesses, with the concept of, if we can create it ourselves, and let's find a way to do that, and then reap all the benefits. Let's empower ourselves. Let's not just make something or just start a business. Let's something that we can control as much as possible, the whole chain of it, so that we can eliminate, quote unquote, the middleman, which usually isn't us, right? So Synergy Eco Solutions Enterprise is a clean and renewable energy empowerment company, all right? And we're not just your average going to put solar panels on your house. Anybody can put solar panels on your house. In fact, I was in a popular home improvement store the other day, and I saw we call it a kiosk for one of the popular companies that can put panels on your house. We want to say, no. Yes, we can do panels, but we want to make sure you understand this whole energy equation first. We want to make sure you understand what is energy first of all, and how does it produced? What is it? We don't want to necessarily do a class, but we want to take you through the process of what are you using, right? We want to look at your electric bill. We want to do an assessment in your whatever it is, your home or your business, and say, let's look at what you're doing now, and let's see how we can bring that number down. Because unfortunately, electricity is not free, right? No, there's no free lunch, right? So how do we bring those numbers down first to say we can do things better, right? Simple stuff like just turn the lights off, right? Turn the lights off and it's over in the room. But there's other things that we can do with the technology available today where you don't even have to think about turning the lights off. You can just set it up and leave it alone, right? Stuff like that. And I'm just giving you real basics, right? But then after that, we take a look at how do we now if we're bringing that number down and getting it to a lower number where you're saving maybe $10, $20, $50 a month. Right? It doesn't sound like a lot of money, but if you save $50 a month on your electric bill, how much is that a year? That's $600 a year, right? That's a couple nice dinners, or that's a car note, whatever. That's rent maybe. Who knows, right? So then after that, we talk about then what are your options now for actually reducing that number even further by finding another way to produce electricity on your own, and then and I would say not just electricity, but also heat. and air conditioning, a way to cool and warm your house, because there are technologies out there. One of the biggest ones being geothermal, where we use the actual heat and cooling of the Earth, the planet Earth, to be as a differential to the heat and cold that you're dealing with in your home or your building, right? So then we look at how is your whatever you're doing, is it feasible to do those things? Unfortunately, you need to either own the property that you're trying to look at, or have a very, very, very good relationship with the owners to be able to look at this, because it requires, zoning, it requires permits, it requires construction and all those type of things. But when it's all said and done, you're talking about trying to either reduce that number that you're paying some other company to zero, or bringing it down significantly where you're only paying them just a little bit and you're producing on your own. Something I got to touch on real quick here, Dr. Ron, because some people get this, I'll say, snake oil salesman story about, well, yeah, if you get solar panels, you can sell electricity back to the electric company. Let's be clear, all right? The electric company is a company, right? The function of a company is to make money, right? They are not going to cut off their nose to spite their face. They're not going to do that. So they will buy, or they will rebate you, right, the amount of electricity you may be able to produce, but they're not going to pay you the same price they charge you, right? Right. So let's be clear about that. So I just looked at a recent ComEd bill from earlier this year. ComEd's rate right now is about 7 cents a kilowatt hour, right? So that's how much they're charging you. You're not going to be able to charge ComEd or whatever utility you have 7 cents a kilowatt hour. It's not going to happen. You might get 2 or 3 cents. So you're never going to get that one for one back for the company. Just like you buy a car and you sell it back, you're not going to get the same amount of money that you paid for it, right? That's right. That's not the way business works, right? So I don't hate them for that, but I just want to make sure that we're clear on that, because people have this. When I tell them I'm in clean and renewable energy, it's like, oh man, how much can I sell back to the electric company? I said, okay, slow down, slow your roll, sit down. Let me explain this to you a little bit so you understand, because I don't want to sell any. I'm not trying to sell no snake oil. I want to make sure that folks understand that you can bring that number down, or you can eliminate it. Meaning that if you can produce enough solar electricity, maybe you can move ComEd or whatever utility out of the way, that you're not even dealing with them, because you can produce so much because you have enough space to put up panels, you have enough space to put up all the back end systems, and be able to store electricity when there's no sun, and then produce enough electricity when there is sun to be able to do the things you want to get done in your home or your business. So that's really where we come from. That's the mentality we're coming from, is we want to empower you with the understanding of what energy is so that you can do it more usefully. The reality about who we are as people of African descent around the world is we don't have access to the tools that we need to be, I don't want to say successful, to live a good life, okay? Mm-hmm. Success is measured in different ways, but if you have the ability to produce power for your home or for your business, to not have to pay a lot of money to do that, to be able to cool yourself, heat yourself, or whatever, you've solved half the problems that a lot of businesses and homes have, right? So, because, I mean, let's look at the continent of Africa. Continent of Africa, 1 billion plus people, but how many people actually have electricity in their homes?
That's
not
true.
A lot.
That's
not
very
a lot,
true.
Right?
The villages are still dark. Yes, sir.
Let's be, and also let's dispel that. Thank you for saying that, because let's dispel that there are modern cities on the continent of Africa. Let's be clear. Mm-hmm. Lagos, Accra, I'm drawing blank.
Kumasi. Yes.
Kumasi. I was thinking of further south. I was thinking about Cape Town.
Yeah, Cape Town, along the coast. Yes.
Nairobi. There are modern, ultra-modern cities, and I don't want people to get away with in Africa is all this jungle. No, it's not. Mm-hmm. It's very modern in some places, but unfortunately, that modernization has not followed suit with the ingenuity and the resources that the continent has. So last time I was in Africa was in 2018. I was just starting to see people talking about solar in 2018. Just starting, even though in a place like Nigeria, you got sun like almost every month.
All year round. Yeah.
And it's hot sun, right? So
all year round. Yeah.
Why isn't solar a part of that? Because again, we have been left out of that. Technology, right? We've been left out of that conversation. So that's part of what we're trying to do as the center as well. How do we bring ourselves to the table in that conversation? So we're actually working with a group in East Africa to look at how do we produce power not only for a particular community center, but also for the surrounding community, so they become the power source and not the national grid, which is never, or I should say never, rarely reliable. Right.
It'll shut down for weeks at a time.
Weeks at a time. Can't count on it. It's probably using, in many cases, it's using old fossil fuels like coal or gas. Right. In some cases, you may have hydropower, but the reality is it's unreliable. and it's not something you can run a business off of, right? If you need to have
Right.
refrigeration 24/7, you can't run on a business that
Right.
only has power every other hour. That doesn't work. So part of what we want to do is get our homes and our businesses across the world out of that mentality of I have to be dependent on somebody else for my livelihood and for my business, right?
Yeah.
So that's really what the synergy is really about. Is how do we bring that power equation to the people who need it most? And we are very unabashedly, unashamedly a Black-owned company. We are pushing an agenda of how do we start building that for our community. So part of what all that means is we're also training people in our community on how to understand this thing called solar, how to understand clean and renewable energy, how to implement it, how to install it, how to design it, right? So we had our first cohort, of students go through and finish up in April. We're trying to get them to sit down to take their certification exams. Now, some of these folks haven't been in high school for years, haven't been, didn't like high school when they were there. So we have to provide them some extra resources, which we're willing to do because we want to get over that hump where no one can ever say, well, you don't have the skills, you don't have the actual aptitude. No, we got all that. We just haven't had the exposure, right? And that's
Right.
really what it's all about. So we're trying to
Right.
provide settings for our people, our young people, our folks who maybe are in need a second chance, maybe had a run-in with the law, and saying, hey, come over here. We're going to get you the skills you need. We're going to give you some cultural understanding with that, what it all means, and we can find ways to get you into the business either through ourselves or through some of our partners so you actually get some hands-on and put the theory to the actual practice and become an expert, right, in that field. Because why are we running to somebody else to be an expert about something we can actually do?
Right. Now,
So
let me ask a question because I know people are running through their mind. So you're not primarily focused just on residential projects. You're looking at commercial projects and
yes,
anything larger than commercial projects that
definitely,
may or may not exist. So
definitely.
your people that you are training will be equipped to handle anything from the smallest to the largest of any of those projects.
That's correct. That's correct. Because we want to be able to say we can do it all. I mean, again, in the residential market, most people are thinking, I want panels on my house. Okay,
Right.
which is fine. That's great. But there's limitations to that, especially in the city. If you live in the city, you only got whatever roof space you have, maybe. And in some cases, the roof space may not even be usable because there's too much shade. You're facing the wrong direction. Okay, in the northern hemisphere, if you got a roof that just faces north, you can get some solar power, but you're not going to get a lot because that's just not the way that's not the physics of the planet, right? In the northern hemisphere, the optimal place to have your panels is facing south, at the
Hmm.
very least. If they can follow east to west, that's great. But again, you got to have that. You got to have that bandwidth. You got to have that
Right.
ability to do that.
Right.
So we want to be able to say in the industrial commercial venue, if you have a business and you own your building or have a very good relationship with the owner of your building, we can find ways to reduce that cost or maybe eliminate that cost if you want to go there, right? I
Right.
mean, we're looking at a business right now that has a very large flat roof, not a lot of shade exposure, and we're like, man, we could trick this all the way out, and they could take ComEd off the table, right?
Right.
If they
Right.
do it, and the reality is they're paying over $2,000 in an electric bill every month. That's
Yeah.
$24,000 a year,
Yep.
right? And if we can take that bill, I'm like, granted, there's an upfront cost. I'm not gonna sell no snake oil, right? There's a cost to do it, right? There's a
Right.
cost to build that system, and fortunately, because your President Biden and your Governor Pritzker are putting forth these initiatives to make these
To make
things
it
more
happen.
affordable and to
Yep.
make grants available and all that. There's some funding available to do those things. Once you get it all said and done, you're talking about a return on investment, meaning you're not paying out anymore. You're actually reaping some benefit, financial benefit from it. Could be months to a year, depending on the size of the system and everything else. Where once it's all said and done, after maybe a year or two, the system is paid for itself because of the money you're saving. I'm not going to talk about what you could sell back because, again, that can be
Yeah,
misleading.
that could be misleading. Yeah, shout out to Donald Green over there in Arizona. Enoch is listening. Paula Gilmore, Daryl Dean dropped in. Red Beans and Rice dropped in. Shout out to all the listeners that popped in on the show today.
Ashe.
Also, not just limited to city dwellers, because
Right.
people listen to my show. They could be in a rural area as well.
No
there
doubt.
there are opportunities to put together what we used to call, 5, 6, 7 years ago when we first talked to Osei, when another company I was working with, microgrids.
That's
where
right.
you can build assemblies of solar panels and
That's
wind
right.
turbines and generate enough power to be able to put a town,
That's
you
right.
know,
You could be a
off grid.
provider.
And that's
You
right,
could be
because you
utility.
got some places like Pembroke, and we talked about this 10
That's
years
right.
ago. Pembroke is not on grid. There's
That's right.
some places they don't have the ability to be able to service their community in Illinois. Pembroke is in Illinois, and it was worse
Right.
than any small Mississippi town you could ever run across
Yep.
for
Yep.
having services.
Yep.
Okay, and as a matter of fact, the Fed went in there a couple of times and had to clean house. They were
That's
so
right.
badly misusing the
That's
resources
right.
that they
That's
had.
right.
But
Right.
then there were still community people there that needed things. I know you've got farms that you work with in Pembroke,
Right.
and these are the types of things that people can consider reaching out to you about getting information about.
No
The
doubt.
website is right there. Osei's information is on the website. You can reach out to him, and definitely he will sit down and, like he said, put a proposal together for you. And there is funding by the federal government still. There's carbon credits available by the state of Illinois. There's resources and initiatives to help get these type of projects up and running and completed.
That's right.
So that's something that you want to reach out to him and get into his head and say, hey, how can we make this happen? And
That's
and
right.
like you can see his excitement about it when he talks about it. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes left, and I definitely want to talk about another uh, that you brought to the city of Chicago,
Right.
which
Right.
is
Right.
this very fine chocolate. Now I got a
Very fine chocolate.
I got a reference point now. So you see the smile on my face, y'all.
Yes,
I've
sir. Yes,
had
sir.
the chocolate.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so tell us about the chocolate.
Yes, sir. So I have been trying to work and have been working with just in the past year a company called 57 Chocolate. It's a chocolate company born out of Ghana by two Ghanaian sisters, biological sisters, who had basically done a little traveling and saw that all these other places that don't grow one lobe of cocoa, talking about they got the best chocolate. She's like, wait, they're like, wait a minute, wait. How y'all got the best chocolate when cocoa comes from us? So they were like, okay, we need to flip the script on this narrative. So they started their own company, 57 Chocolate, and I want to say 2015, 16, and have been focusing on that concept of 1957. That's why it's called 57 Chocolate. That's when Ghana got its independence. There's a bar right there. Which one is that? The dark chocolate? All right, there you go, Dr. Ron. I should have had some with me. I apologize. I didn't have them up. But it is locally grown cocoa, locally produced chocolate, locally packaged chocolate, and I have been begging them for years. How can I sell some of your chocolate in Chicago? How can I make it a household name? And so we've been working together on that. So the chocolate now actually is available if you're interested. If you want to go to a nice black bookstore in Chicago, I would suggest you go by Afriware. They are carrying the chocolate there. Afriware. It's in Maywood, Illinois. The Afriware site is over at right there at First Avenue and Eisenhower Expressway in the Eisenhower Building right there. They're on the fourth floor. Sister Nzinga there has been kind enough to help, if you will, host the chocolate. We're actually going to be doing an event on Black Friday to push the chocolate, and she has a lot of other things going on. She's supporting artists, and I'm gonna go and talk about the chocolate. They have a multitude of varieties. You can think of it just as their basic milk chocolate, dark chocolate, white chocolate, which really isn't chocolate, and then also a latte chocolate. Okay, so those are 4 basic flavors, but then you could have all kind of variations. You could have milk chocolate with moringa, dark chocolate with bisop, or what we know as hyssop, or also known as sorrel, or jamaica, right? You could have nuts in it. You could have coconut flakes in it. So there's all different variations. One of the things that they really pride themselves is also bringing the culture with the chocolate. So they have a taster's kit, which I think you have, Dr. Ron. It's a
Yes.
taster kit, which has the Ndinkra symbols, which are the traditional symbols of the Akan people, which have religious and cultural significance to them. There's hundreds of Ndinkra symbols. The ones that we probably know the most are probably the Jiname, which is like the two, almost looks, people think of it as like a African yin and yang, but it has nothing to do with that. It's about it basically says I shall bow to no one. There's nobody but God. That's what
Right.
Gina speaks to. And then one of my favorites is Akko Ben, which is the war horn, saying that we sound the war horn when we're at war. And unfortunately, yes, we are still at war, and I try to sound the war horn as much as possible. So they have these indicator sets and really trying to connect, as you saw in the packaging, connect it to the culture, connect to who we are as African people worldwide. So 57 Chocolate, you can get it at Afterwear Books over in Maywood. You also go to 57 Chocolate gh.com, which is their website, but they have to ship it from Ghana. I already got it here. I did that for you. So if you want to get chocolate, 57 Chocolate, hit me up. You have my phone number, you have the website, you have email. Sue's email there. You can see
Now,
the ads
just
as
they have
well.
to go to the Synergy
Okay,
website and all your
synergy.com.
information. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So check me out.
yeah.
The chocolate is we need to sell it quickly because
Hmm.
chocolate does expire. But I'm hoping to be a regular supplier of 57 Chocolate and support these sisters in their effort to get the real story of chocolate and how it relates to African people in a good way out to our community.
And it's also on the Black Mall, right? Isn't it on the Black Mall?
It is in the Black Mall, but I don't know how much. I don't know how it's labeled in the Black Mall. I'm saying it
Gotcha.
everywhere. It's actually, you go in the store, it's right there
And
at the
it's right
register. They
there.
got it right
They
there.
got an inventory
Right.
right there.
That's
Yeah,
right.
man. I want to thank you for coming on the show, man. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Sure.
Unfortunately, our time has run out for today.
Been talking to me.
We only got an hour show, so
Yes, sir.
I know we can go forever.
Yes, sir.
You're welcome to always come back whenever
Hey,
you
bro,
got
whenever you
time.
need me, I'm here.
Yes,
I'm
sir. Yes,
whenever
sir.
you need me, I'm here.
Always,
Yes, sir. Yes,
because
sir.
every time we get started, man, we no telling where we're gonna wind up at.
That's right. Right.
But what would you like to leave with the people before we get out of here today?
Again, I think I want to highlight the point I was trying to make, that as African people of African descent, whether you believe it or not, you are an African person. If you are black in this country, we need to change the paradigm of the conversation. Okay, we need to stop. I don't, like I said, I don't use the word slave. I talk about our ancestors being prisoners of war. I don't call them race riots. They are terrorist acts, and terrorist acts, unfortunately, are happening to black people consistently even now. We say that the Ma'afa, the great disaster, not slavery, but this great disaster that has been inflicted upon black people for thousands of years. Really, again, with the dawn of the Roman Empire, so pretty much, we have to change our mindset. Right? I know we all want the big house and the nice car and the big TV and all that, but we have to focus on how do we come together? How do we come together as a people across the channels, right? Across the world. Let's get out of the mindset of the people in the continent of Africa don't care nothing about us and we shouldn't care nothing about them. Let's stop that. Because when you sit down with, just like you can find folks in the community who ain't down with being black here, yes, you'll find them there. But I've been to the continent a number of times, and every time I go there, I'm always finding folks to vibe with, if you will, to build with, and we built on things. That's how I started the chocolate thing. This dashiki right here, the shirt I'm wearing, is a result of a relationship I've made with some brothers and sisters on the continent. Everything that I try to be about is about that, and I think that we can do so much more if more of us are doing that and building that whole relationship. And be a gift to the world. That's what Rotary says. It's upside down.
Yes, 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 definitely. Thank you once again, man. I appreciate you. You know I love you, and
Yes,
we're gonna
sir.
have you back on here again, probably within the next month or so. I know the holiday season is coming up.
Yes, sir.
Have to squeeze it in between your family events because I know your family, you're very family orientated, and you got a lot of things going on with the family. But man, I love you and I appreciate you. It's always a pleasure to have
Yes,
you
sir.
on the show. So you
Yes,
sit
sir.
right there. We're gonna throw this up. Please make donations and contributions. I need your support. We have a Cash App there. We've got the Zelle. We got the PayPal. Go over to the Ask Dr. Ron, ask-dr-ron.com. You can make contributions there. You can also subscribe, like, and share. Go over to our YouTube channel. This show will be listed there very shortly. I'm going to be putting it up in a few minutes so that you can share it around. Subscribe, like, and share. If you subscribe and you hit the little bell, you'll get notification every time we put up a new show. So you definitely want to do that. And we appreciate and we love you. We'll see you all on Sunday when we have another Black History moment. And we appreciate you all for stopping in and checking out the show. Stay blessed.